Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a track guide at Oschersleben for the BMW M2 series in week 2. Let's get straight into it. Right, there's two fundamental things for this car that I want to speak about first. The first one is for the braking, you never really want to go above 60-65% because the ABS engages around that point and it's very invasive. So the braking performance won't be as good and you get a lot of understeer. And the second thing is on the exits, it's a similar thing with the traction control. If you get back to full throttle, like coming out of the low speed corners, you will get a lot of TC. That would just mean you can't accelerate as quickly. So those are the two main things that you need to be aware of on this car. So coming into turn 1, we're going to be all the way on the right hand side. And I'm looking for this yellow part of the barrier on the right. From the cockpit, as soon as it leaves the screen here, is when I'm going to apply the first bit of the braking. So I'm going to go up to around 50% to scrub off some speed, down to 4th gear. And then I'm going to trail off the brake as I turn into this first apex. You want to try and get as close to the yellow sausage curves as possible. So I could have cut a little bit more here. The important thing is releasing the brake as you turn to not engage the ABS, so you'll get more rotation to get around this corner and carry some more speed. And then as soon as I'm around here, as soon as the car's pointing in a straight line towards this next curb, I'm going to shift down to 3rd and increase the braking pressure again to get the car slowed down. Coming up is a really long right-hander, so we're going to take it a bit like a double apex. So you could consider this first apex being coming over this curb. And as I get into the corner and start to steer more, I'm going to release the brake pressure as I go. So increasing the steering lock and decreasing the brake pressure. I use this white line on the pit exit as a reference. When I reach it, I gradually come back on throttle again here. Because if you go straight to full throttle here, well, first of all, you just go straight on, but you'll get the TC engaging. So I'm gradually coming back on, and as I increase the throttle application, I'm going to decrease the steering lock. And still being careful, and then I aim for the second apex to be around just before this, or at this sausage curb here. It should set you up for a good exit. You can use the red and white part, although it can sometimes make the car over-rotate and you lose the rear. I end up getting back to full throttle just before it. And this is one of the exits where you have to be careful. From here, I'm only using the throttle to rotate the car, so I need to balance the steering to make sure that the rear doesn't go. Using all of the track on the exit, you can come all the way up to this, the green AstroTurf, but if you go on the grass, you get the 1X. So up here, I'm looking for this part of, I think it's drainage or something. This is where I'm going to start braking. From 4th down to 3rd gear. Again, peaking at around 65%. And this corner is very banked towards the inside, so as I'm turning in, I'm going to bleed off the brake. And because it's banked, you can turn in a lot earlier than you normally would, because it will help you rotate around the corner the sooner you get into the banking. And also, you don't have to be right on the apex. You can be slightly off it here. Because of the banking, it will still help you and you won't lose as much time. Another thing that helps with is you can get on throttle really early. So you can see I'm barely into the corner and I'm already getting back on throttle. Again, just gradually coming on throttle. And as I increase the throttle percentage, I decrease the steering. Again, just being careful of the traction control on the exit here. It's really important you apply it gradually, otherwise you'll just get a worse exit. Again, track limit is the grass here. And yeah, just get back on the track before sort of the end of this curve, because there's a few bumps which can lose you a few hundredths. This next sequence is probably one of the hardest to get right. There isn't too many good braking markers here, but I'm looking for this 3rd to last bollard. That's where I'm going to turn in, and I'm going to, for this initial apex, I'm going to apply just 5 or 10% braking. I aim to get my left wheels on this green AstroTurf on the left here, and then I allow the car back out, and I'm going to aim for this curb here on the left. I like to keep the car in fourth gear the whole way around here. I think you could use third, but I just found it more consistent in fourth. Yeah, you can use the red and white part, but not the sausage. And I'm still on the brake a tiny bit here to get the car rotated. But around this point is where I gradually come back on throttle. And when you come back on throttle depends on if you can make this corner here. So if I'd carried too much speed here, I would delay my throttle application, or if I'd scrubbed too much, I would get on throttle a little bit earlier, just to not lose too much time. This entry is very important because it leads to through the corners. You want to let the car quite far out to the right to open it up, so you can carry some more speed. I brake when I get to the curb here, again around 50%, down to third gear, then I trail brake into the corner. The more I'm turning, the less I'm braking. And again, this corner's banked quite a lot to the apex, which helps us around. So you don't have to be right on the curbing here. And again, it's a bit like a double apex, like turn 1. So the first apex is around like this start of this curb, and you can let the car out to the middle. You don't want to go too wide here. You still want to be in the banking because you'll lose too much time. But you can, you don't have to be right on the white line here. Gradually applying the throttle quite early again because of the banking. But you want to make sure you do this last sort of 30% slowly so that you don't lose the rear. Because the TC does engage quite a lot on most of these exits if you just smash it. And the second apex is around sort of the end of this curb, or this green bit. The grip does change if you go on here. So just make sure you stay sort of on this white line instead of over it. Yeah, there's less grip on the AstroTurf here. And that should set you up to get a nice exit. Again, over here you can use all of the green AstroTurf, but the grass will give you the 1x. And this next set of corners, again, is pretty difficult. The main thing you want to focus on through here is purely the exit onto the back straight. So that means we're going to slightly sacrifice these first two apexes to get a good run onto the main straight, so we don't lose too much time down there. There's a trick you can use for this first entry. You can cut some of the grass on the left here. See, I use it. Don't do probably much more than this because you'll get a 1x, but it helps open up this first apex so you can carry slightly more speed. And as soon as I get off the grass, I'm already starting to lift slightly. And you want to come in, just miss this sausage curb, and then I'm completely off the throttle and brake. You can sort of let the car roll through these two corners, or this corner here. I'm still in fourth gear. And yeah, you want to get as close to this bollard as possible. If you cut too much, you get a slowdown, like if you hit it, but if the closer you get to it, the more rotation you'll get, because there's a slight bump here where this curb is, which is also why I don't use any inputs, because sometimes it can just throw the car around as you come out of the bump. So getting as close to this bollard as possible, just missing it. And I'm trying to keep the car as much to the left as possible so I can set up for this right-hander. Still in fourth gear. You'll notice as soon as I get out of the bump, you see the suspension compression. That's when I start braking. It's going to be to around 20%, I'd say, down to third gear. Trail off instantly, and you want to keep a tiny amount of brake pressure just to help the car rotate through the corner. And you want to use the red and white part of the curb as well. It can help you rotate around, but not the sausage curb. And again, just getting on throttle quite early here, but not all the way to full throttle, as it will engage the traction control, which will ruin your exit. So you see I get back to full throttle like pretty much when I'm fully straightened up. And again, grass is the track limit on the exit. So for the chicane, there's sort of two things you could look for. One I use is the 100 board. So from the cockpit, it's as this 100 board disappears behind this pillar over here, is when I start braking. The second one you could use is probably around a car's length before these tyre marks. But I don't like using this one as it's a bit sort of arbitrary. It's not as consistent, I should say. So up to around 50-60% again on the brake. Down to third gear. I'm going to trail brake. I sort of turn in at this green part of the track here. Turn in, still coming off the brake as I turn in. And you want to get as close to this sausage curb on the right here, because like the closer you get to it, the more grip there is for some reason. Again, I'm sacrificing this first apex so I can get a good exit out of here. So I'm going to try and keep the car as far to the right as possible as soon as I get off the curb. Gradually come back on throttle, just a little bit here. And I use this service road as a sort of reference for where I'm going to lift and turn in. It's not a massive lift this corner, it's just I come off when I get to the service road, sort of as I turn in, to help the car rotate. And then as soon as I'm sort of confident that the car is going to make the corner, I come back on throttle. So in this case, it's just before this curb. And again, similar theme. You need to get as close to this curb as possible, but don't use it because this car's suspension doesn't like the sausage curves around here. Back to full throttle. This exit is the only one that's different on the track. For this exit, it's not the gravel. It's the edge of this red and white curb, so just make sure you keep your left tyres just inside here. For this fast right-hander, again, there's two things you can use. You can use these sort of tyre marks on the ground here, or you can use these lights on the top right. So again, it's when these leave the screen or just after the start of these tyre marks. So I'm braking here, so just as it left the top right. I keep the car in fourth gear through here. You can turn in quite early, and you want to get on this curb on the inside. But as you come off it can make the car bounce a little bit, so you just be careful of the rear stepping out. I sort of brake to like 30%, and then I trail off quite quickly because it's not a lot of speed you need to scrub off. And again, just keeping that small amount of brake pressure on to make sure the car keeps rotating. I come back on throttle, sort of at the curb here. Again, just being careful of not smashing it, because the traction control would engage and it would just ruin the exit. Again, on this exit, the gravel here is the track limit. This corner, the final corner, I see a lot of people making mistakes because they just don't really know where the track limit is. That's completely fine. That's fine here. You can use all of this pit entry without getting a 1x. So you see I'm staying all the way out wide, and I will drive over this sort of triangle here to help open up the corner and carry more speed. So I'm braking sort of a car length before this white line here across the road. Hard in a straight line, down to third gear quite early to get the engine braking going. And you want to take a late apex here, just because of like the profile of the corner, it starts turning already, even though the apex is all over here. And you want to focus on the exit here, prioritize the exit as it's quite a long straight afterwards. And I'm turning in sort of at the end of the green part here, just as the grass starts. Slowly tipping the car in, keeping a little bit of brake on and getting on throttle really early. This is really important in this corner, again because of the long straight afterwards. You can use some of the curb. Usually, actually I think it is fine to use it. Just the red and white part, but it can unsettle the car sometimes. It's being consistent as you come off it. Sometimes I just use a little bit like I do on this lap, and again not using the sausage curb. So here, just at the bottom of the curb, and being careful as I apply the throttle to not engage the TC or lose the rear. Just come through here. Again, I'm pretty much on full throttle before it's even pointing towards the exit, and that's because you can use the throttle to rotate the car a lot in this combination. So you can see I'm balancing the steering with the throttle because the rear is trying to rotate around. It's just quite a fun part about this car. I quite like that you can do that. Again, the track limit on this exit is this gravel here on the left, and you'll notice as I come into this curb, notice that bump down. This is a 3D curb, and there's a slight drop here. So you sort of have to anticipate the rear wanting to rotate more. So here I know that it's going to happen every single time on this exit. So I'm already thinking, right, I'm going to need to counter steer a little bit as I go into the curb, otherwise I'll lose the rear. Even just a little bit can hurt this exit quite a lot. So you'll see I'm counter steering here already even. I go into the compression and I try to just keep the steering straight and the throttle at the same percentage. Right up against the gravel. And that should be it. So that was a track guide at Oschersleben. 1:34.035. These were the sector times, if you're interested in specific parts where you're losing time. And I'll leave the conditions I used in the description of the video. Thank you for watching. That's going to be all for this one. I'll see you in the next one.